Why would any of us forgive everyone that has ever hurt us? I mean, you can see reasons to forgive some people. People that have made a mistake, people that approach you and say, I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing. I made the wrong judgment call. I thought something different and I've now been corrected, and please forgive me. I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. Not only is it easy to forgive somebody like that, but it's easy to ask forgiveness and have that work out. Yeah, forgiveness is an easy thing. But what about the person that hit and run your car out on the street and just left it damaged for you to have to deal with? What about the person that stole from you, broke into your home, and you have no idea who it is? What about all the people that bullied you and teased you, really harassed you in school growing up? Or the parents who beat you, who abused you mentally, physically? What about the person that molested you, that raped you, perhaps repeatedly? Why would you even consider forgiving somebody who has done something so horrific to you and they don't even care? They've never said anything to you. You're nothing to them. Why would you forgive somebody like that? Many people share that story with me. Most of that was my life. And there's a lot of people out there that have had that and worse. How do you forgive? And why would you? Our spiritual and our religious traditions teach us to forgive, that it's better for you, that it keeps you happier, that it helps God forgive you if you forgive others, that you get better blessings by forgiving, by being that kind of a person. Why do I need to please God? Why do I need to forgive somebody that has done something? They're the ones that need to be asking for help. They're the ones that need to get straightened out. Not me. I was the victim. I've learned in life that there's an incredibly good reason. And even though I've been told, yes, it's better to forgive, I remember asking, why? What benefit is it? And people would say, well, it just makes you feel better. It's just good for you. And that was never good enough for me. It was like, I was hurt. I'm not letting them off the hook. I eventually figured out why it was important to do so, and it had absolutely, positively nothing to do with them. It was all about me, and I want to share what I've learned. So come on, let's take a look at it. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel and welcome to Just One Truth. And yeah, that whole forgiveness idea has been a very significant sticking point for me in my life, having grown up with a lot of pain and shame and hurt, and not ever wanting to let that stuff out. I wanted to keep it all hidden inside of me because it was too hurtful and too shameful. I didn't want to deal with it. There's a point, though, where in learning about the spiritual world and assuming how things work, looking at how things work, and for myself making this correlation that what they were talking about healing, the soul, the spirit, what they were talking about was something that was very observable to them, but we could look at that same thing today and say, ooh, that's the subconscious mind perhaps. They didn't know what a brain was. They didn't know we had a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, but they saw those two things working. And we know today that if you have to heal some process about the way you feel, that it doesn't happen in your heart or somewhere in the rest of your body. It happens in your thought process. It happens in your brain. I think we can go right to that and say, let's just take a look at that. Then we don't have to invoke some kind of supernatural, spiritual angels, some sort of entities beyond, or invoke some sort of power that is beyond us. It puts this whole process right in our hands and with something that we can grasp. We know things today that they didn't know. So let's bring them into play. Let's look at the human mind and the subconscious and how that works. We don't have to make up anything here. We can just look at what we know and correlate it to what they taught. And we can, I think, update the information that they gave us and actually make a significant change in our own lives. Yes, there is that idea that if you heal yourself, if you let go of things, if you release the things that you're holding on to, that it will improve your life. It'll make you feel better. It'll allow things to unfold better. And that's what really we're looking for to happen here. Again, it's not about the other person, but I myself needed to understand the mechanics of that. As I went through my own spiritual growth, I realized that in Buddhism, that in Taoism, that in Christianity, that in Islam, that in any religion you study, they will tell you that you really need to forgive the other person because it just gives you blessings. It makes you feel better. And I questioned that. I really did. I didn't see a reason to do all of that, especially when I had walls up for some of it to be there. Being molested was something that I hated somebody for, but that wasn't all there was to it. I was also very ashamed of it, so I wasn't going to ever tell anybody. So there's kind of this dual problem going on. You've got something you're carrying that's bad, and number two, you want to hide it. It's like you're burying it even worse, and we don't know that that's damaging. So let's get to the brain right away and just take a look at some very simple things that nobody has to question. We know these, they're pretty basic, high school at least, understanding here. That the brain, at the very minimum for this discussion, we know that it holds the memories of our experience and the emotional state that went with it. So when you were hurt and you remember that, years later you will continue to feel that hurt. If you have been made to feel shame, then whenever you remember that, you will feel ashamed when you remember it. We see the emotional state and the memory of what happened, the event itself, tied together. You know what? You can't change what happened. You can change the emotional state. And that is necessary because of now something we have to kind of stretch for. This is something that would have to be experiential. And the idea here is, and this is my experience, that my life unfolds, generally speaking, based on the condition of my soul or the condition of my thoughts. When my head was jumbled up and I had a lot of confusing things earlier on in life, life unfolded that very same way. It seemed like it was out of control. As I learned to let things go and resolve things, all of that kind of smoothed out. Everything started working much better for me. I saw an experiential change in the experience of my life once I started resolving what was up here. But also for me, I had to understand that the overall quality of my life was directly contingent upon the overall quality of my mental space, my mind. The more stuff I hid away, the worse my life was. The more stuff I got out and resolved and let go, the more life became that way. You know the saying, as within, so without. This is it. This is how it works. This is how we create our lives, by creating our inner self. So if you're on board with that, then you understand why the importance is of forgiveness. That your life unfolds not based on what happened to you one time, but it unfolds based on what you are now today. And what you hold on to continually creates itself in your life. It repeats in some way. It might not be the event itself, but it's constantly being triggered. You're constantly feeling it. You're constantly being haunted by it. You can't put it away, or it's affecting you, or it's affecting the people around you. You're acting out. You're screaming, you're yelling, you're judging a certain people. Something, somehow, some way, it emerges from you. It doesn't stay inside, and it creates less quality in your life output than there could be. Not only is it acting out on its own, but it's like that part of you, your brain, your energy, your overall capacity is not available for what you would like, because you've got something else stored away there that acts as a filter that takes a part of your capacity to create your life and ties it up. The idea that when you forgive, you get greater blessings, that's why. Not necessarily that Brahma or Buddha or God or the cosmos or the Easter Bunny, whatever, is blessing you, but because you yourself are the creator in charge and you are giving yourself better opportunity to create by getting rid of the crap that is a part of you. So, the forgiveness then isn't about the other person and their life. What happened to you, what happened to me, isn't who we are. It's just what happened to us. That's another thing to remember. We are not that event. Those events happen to us as people. We are something different. So we have to realize that when we're hanging on to it like this, we're very much identifying with being that person. We are in victim mode. And we have to step outside of ourselves and realize that and say, boy, I was just some person that was there. If it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. Okay, listen to this part carefully. It's very important to understand this. You're not really forgiving, ultimately. What you're doing that makes the difference is changing the way you view it. You're changing your own self. The forgiveness, which sounds like I got to let that person off the hook, is actually a residual. It is a byproduct of healing yourself. The forgiveness happens as a secondary thing. Okay, got it. Can't emphasize it enough. Forgiving the other person is about healing yourself. Always remember it that way. It's about you. Okay, before we move on, I want to cover a couple of verses right here. This is kind of fun stuff. I just like to throw these in. Holding a grievance is like drinking poison, thinking it will kill your enemy. Nelson Mandela. He abused me, attacked me, defeated me, robbed me. In those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. The Buddha. If you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. Jesus. The repayment of a bad action is one equivalent to it. But if someone pardons and puts things right, his reward is with Allah. Quran 42:40. You cycle around that which you cling to. That was me. And that's because that's been my experience. You do. When you're hanging on to something that you don't even want anybody to know about, you try to deny it, you're actually hanging on to it. You're hanging on to it with hatred. And it continues to emerge in your life in that same way because that's the way you're hanging on to it. So you have to change the way you're holding it. That's where the forgiveness comes in, because this is the tough part now, because you could say forgive them and you say, how do I forgive them? Or you might say, I forgive them, but yet it hasn't changed. It's still a problem. Why is that? Again, we're looking at the brain, electrochemical and neural pathways, conditioning. It doesn't happen always overnight. Sometimes you have to spend a little time with it. First of all, you know you've forgiven them if you can talk about things freely, if you can open up about it without having the same emotional attachment. That's how you know whether or not you have forgiven somebody. How do you feel about it? And if you don't feel okay about it, then it's not done yet. It may not happen in a one moment of saying, okay, I forgive them. You might have to process things. You might have to look at it. I think it was Buddha who said something like, look at something through 1,000 different eyes and it will cease to have its meaning. You need to step outside of yourself, look at what happened, try to not view the memory as that victim. What you need to do ultimately is change your perceptions. Healing and forgiving happens when you view the incident in a different way than what you originally do. So that's what you have to do. And I'll tell you what I did in my example, just to help, just to show you, yeah, I did this. I had run away from home, was a young teenager on the streets, eating out of garbage cans. and was taken in by people who said I was too young to be on the streets, and then they molested me. And that was something that I carried for many years as an incredible shame and anger. And how I reconciled it, ultimately in the end, was realizing I was eating out of garbage cans on the streets. I was like 15 years old. I was going to die. I was not going to live. Look at me now. Look at where I am. I continue to move ahead in my world, in my life. I'm not eating out of garbage cans. My life is fine. I've turned things around. If they hadn't taken me off the streets, regardless of what happened, I would probably be dead, number one. Number two, I'm okay. I'm not hurt. Nothing permanent except that my pride and my ego and everything else was out of shape. At some point you look at it and go, okay, I can see why I can look at this in a way and say that there could have been a benefit. And I'm not saying that I advocate it or that I would want to repeat it or anything like that. What you're trying to do is make it okay in your own mind. You have to find what works for you. Everybody's situation's a little different. Get inventive. Step outside yourself. Try to find a way that whatever happened to you can be looked at as a good thing. When you change the way you feel about it in your mind, then it ceases to act out in life under those terms. And that's the reason why you forgive. It's not about the other person. It's all about you. It is incredibly significant. The differences in my life where things just happen automatically that are good, where things always, I always used to have to face things like, oh my gosh, what next? Things keep falling apart. And then when I think it can't get any worse, something else happens. That doesn't happen anymore in life. Now it's like good things happen. The blessings turn around. The blessings happen because you, as an entity that has this massive amount of capacity to create, have got yourself tied up with a lot of different things, a lot of different filters, a lot of different beliefs, a lot of perceptions, a lot of ideas that when they're locked into something that is a conviction, they're not available for anything except for that conviction. If you want to free it up, if you want to have a better life, if you want to have more of your own desire and capacity to unfold, then get rid of all of the things that interfere with it. You know, when somebody says all that other stuff is just called so what? I disagree. I disagree. When I ignored that stuff, my life was messed up. When I took care of that stuff, my life turned around. And now things work. And all I can really say is that they work in that magical way where good things just happen to you. It's not some kind of psychic mental power or something like that. It's just that it seems like we attract what we're about. And when you have a lot of stuff inside of you that you don't like, even if you're not the one that made it be a part of your life, but you carry it, it still affects you as if it was. You're a part of that creation. And you have to change what it is. And you also have to be on board with this whole idea. Ultimately, on this path, when you go searching, only you can walk that path, and the path is through your own mind. That's why every path is different. Yeah, it goes through your experiences. Nobody else has them. And sometimes people might have similar experiences, but different perceptions about them. They might have had something happen that you had happen, and they're not hurt by it while you're devastated by it. All you can do is look at yourself, examine your own emotions, your own feelings, and the way that you act out, and the way that you feel about it. And if you don't like those things, you have to pull them out. You have to find a way to be okay with it. And once you get to that point, they don't act out anymore. They are now no longer that old entity, for lack of a better word. It's no longer a weed in your garden or one of the demons that possess you, a skeleton in your closet. Once you get it out of there, once you resolve it, once you make friends with it, it no longer acts out anymore. So forgiveness is ultimately about your life, not the life of anyone else. It's about your life. It's about aligning your mind in a way that it is happy and comfortable, that it's not harboring bad things that are effective, in hurting your life, unbeknownst to you. You can see it, though, if you step back and realize, I keep cycling around something. So that lets you know, yeah, I've got a problem. I have to get rid of that. The reason you get rid of it, though, is because it improves your life. And that's all there is to it. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to figure out a way to minimize my verbosity. I'll see you on the next video.